Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another lockdown lessons taught by me, Joe Webster. Let me just double check I'm on the right Wi-Fi this morning. Yeah. Okay. So today's lesson is going to be following on the theme from this week, which is looking at the hands. I have something that I have come up with that I would like to kind of present to you guys. And I wonder, maybe if people are watching this and they want to have any kind of opportunity to let me know in the chat if they have any specific issues with their wrist. In a kind of a prior point in my life, I was a gardener, and I did a lot of manual work and put a lot of kind of like impact into my wrist joint. So for me, I've really had to kind of like look at this part of myself and kind of give it TLC. And I think that this lesson is a nice way to do that. But maybe you have some other parts of your hands that, experience pain, have some tendonitis or something kind of like irritation from overuse or anything like that. So if you have anything like that and you want to put it in the chat, maybe that's a good way for me to kind of like pick up the subjects of the later lessons in the week. Morning, TC. Thanks for tuning in. What I'd like you to do initially is just to close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, just bring your attention to your body overall. A kind of whole sense of yourself. Maybe you notice your breathing, how you're sitting on your chair. And maybe you notice your thoughts, kind of a sense of activity. And just take a moment to kind of like, settle into the lesson, come away from whatever you were doing, and kind of tune into yourself. I hope that these lessons provide a nice opportunity for you guys to do that in your day. I think it's pretty worthwhile. Okay, so if you have both of your hands resting down on your lap, so one hand on either thigh. And what I'd like you to do is very gently, so if this is one hand resting on a thigh, I'd like you to very gently just lift the wrist of the right hand away from the thigh and back down. Very gently lift the wrist. Sorry, I'm not talking in the mic. Lift the wrist away from the thigh, leaving the fingers connected, relaxed, and bring it back down. So you're making this movement from the wrist. There's no activity in the hands, and there's not so much activity in the elbow. There might be a bit. So you're just lifting the wrist away from the ground or away from the surface and bringing it back down. And just feel how comfortable that is for you. Is that an easy movement? Is it easy for you to differentiate the wrist in that way? Good, and then let the right wrist rest. That's a tongue twister. The right wrist rest. And then start to do the same thing with the left wrist. Just very gently, the surface that is on, which is the leg, just lifting the wrist away and bringing it down. Lifting it away and bringing it down. Just very comfortably, very easily. And just notice if there's any difference you feel between the left wrist and the right wrist. Does one feel kind of easier to make this movement? More skillful? Is the movement more smooth on one side? And you can notice your breathing as you do this. Do you hold your breath? Are you still kind of keeping some sense of your overall physical comfort? Good. Okay, and then relax the left wrist. So the bones of the wrist, and maybe I can show you. He's not the best demonstration model for this. But if you see that the bones of the wrist join in, and there's more bones in this area, okay? So they've fused the hand and the tarsal bones, the carpal bones, and anyway, the small bones that join in with the hand. But you can see that there's two long bones in the arm, okay? This one, the smaller one that rotates, called the radius, and the bigger one that's more for stability, called the ulna. Okay, so just to give you an idea that there's two bones joining down, and as it joins into the wrist, you've got all these kind of like little bones that on this model are fused, but they're not in reality. Hi, morning, Louise. Morning. I can't see from, if you put your name down, if you're, that's useful. Some of the StreamYard doesn't quite pick up on Facebook exactly who's watching. But hi, thanks for tuning in. Okay, so I'd like you to lift your left wrist in the air. Lift your left wrist in the air. Take your right index finger and begin to draw a circle around your left wrist using your right index finger. So you're holding your left wrist in the air and you're just drawing a circle around the left wrist. And see if you can keep breathing as you do this so that you don't feel that holding the arm in the air is uncomfortable. You can let the fingers of the left hand relax and close your eyes as you do this and see if you can kind of feel the tracing. Okay, so you're tracing your index finger. The index finger has a lot of sense receptors on it. So you can feel what the wrist feels like externally. But you can also feel from the wrist's perspective, you can feel the finger traveling around the wrist. Okay, so keep your eyes closed and just continue to make this circle. It's kind of like you're building a 3D image of your wrist. Take your time, do it slowly. If you're at a certain point, you could change direction. Take your index finger around in the other direction. Do it really nice and slowly. Good. A few more times. Keeping your eyes closed, pay attention to your breathing, keeping your fingers soft. Good. And then bring your arm down and take a little rest. So that was the left wrist. And then just a few times, lift the left wrist away from the thigh as we did at the beginning. Lift the left wrist away from the thigh. See if you can leave the fingers relaxed. And then just bring it back down. Lift it away and bring it back down. Maybe as you bring it back down, you could feel a slight ability for the wrist to push down into the thigh so that you've got both movements available, an upwards movement and a downwards movement into the thigh. Good. Okay, and then when you're ready, bring your left arm back up, place your index finger back on your left wrist. And this time I'd like you to move your wrist around your index finger. So you leave your right arm still. You leave the index finger where it is. And now you're moving your left wrist around the index finger. Keep your eyes closed. Use kind of, your sensory perception to track the movement and to kind of feel the feelings of how the wrist feels, how the finger feels. Good. Once you've done it a few times in one direction, change and do it in the other direction. And see if you can kind of in your mind's eye or in your imagination build up a 3D image of your wrist, leaving your index finger still, taking your wrist around. Good. And then come to rest. Place your left hand down on your thigh again. Very gently just go back to lifting your left wrist away from the ground and putting it down. If you want, one other way that you can kind of really make sure that the fingers are not doing anything is you could rest the right hand on the left fingers. So as I do that, and then if I go to move my left wrist, it's like I'm keeping my hand in place. So that's another option. And as you lift the wrist and you push it down, just see kind of does if you do this with your eyes closed again, does the sort of different sense of 3D kind of relationship that you're developing with the wrist influence how you're doing this movement in some way? Good. Okay, and then relax. Take a rest. When you're ready, just place your right hand down on your thigh. And let's do that. So if you place your left hand on your right fingers, and then just lift the right wrist away from the ground, from your thigh, and push the right wrist down into the thigh. Just do it very gently, very lightly. We're exploring flexion and extension in the wrist. See if you can keep breathing as you do this, and see if you can kind of do it for the sake of your own comfort rather than to kind of get anything or any improvement. See if you can do it like so that your wrist feels nice. We often think that we have to kind of like be mean to ourselves in order to get somewhere. But actually, I think it's often the opposite. The kinder we are, the better we feel when we get somewhere. Good. Okay, so then bring your right wrist up in the air. Take your left index finger, and just begin to trace round with the left index finger with your eyes closed. Trace round, feeling the shape of the wrist. And maybe you can feel underneath the fingers the kind of shape of the bones, where the bones are positioned in the wrist, how they join in with the hand. Can you feel kind of any kind of bony sort of bits that stick out? Can you identify any landmarks of the wrist? Keeping your eyes closed. Just kind of get this circular sense. So it's like you're tracing around a circle, and see if you can get this circle to be really smooth. Kind of continuous and smooth. Good. Leave your left index finger where it is and begin to take your right wrist around. Begin to take your right wrist around the left index finger. So now the left arm is staying in place and you're taking the wrist around the index finger. Keeping your eyes closed, keep your breathing smooth. Good. Okay, and then bring your arms down and take a rest. Have your right hand on your right thigh. Place your left hand on your right hand. And very gently, I'd like you to see if you can make a circular movement with your wrist. So before we were just lifting and lowering, lifting and lowering. lifting, and lowering. Okay, what I want you to do now is see if you can find a very small circle. So it's like a little lift, a little to the right, a little lower, a little to the left. And you're just doing the movement in your wrist. Okay, your hand is still, your fingers are relaxed. Just see if you can find it. It might be minuscule. It might be just the tiniest little circle. It doesn't need to be a big movement. And again, see if you can do it for your own sense of comfort. Feel this kind of little rotation in the bones of the wrist, how it's affecting the arm. Maybe the elbow's moving now. And then when you're ready, do the small circles, but in the other direction. Just take it very easy, very slowly. You can get a sense of kind of like all of the kind of interesting moving parts of the wrist. Good. Take a little rest. Take a moment just to kind of feel yourself in sitting. When you're ready, place your left hand down on your left thigh, put your right hand on your left hand. So it's kind of holding the fingers in place, and begin to make this small movement, this small circular movement with the wrist, with the left wrist. Small circular movement with the left wrist, leaving the fingers still or soft. And do it really slowly. Do it really slowly and really small. And when you're ready, go in the other direction. Good. Take a rest. Maybe just have your hands resting in a different position. Feel how relaxed the fingers are. Feel how relaxed the wrists are. And then we've got one or two final things to do. You'll just kind of see in yourself, like, is there a kind of change in terms of your internal sensation of your wrists and how they feel, how that part of you feels? And then when you're ready, bring your two arms up, both arms. Okay, and what I want you to do is take the right arm, the right wrist around the left wrist. So I'm leaving the left wrist in place, and I'm taking the right wrist around the left wrist. So I'm circling one around the other, one wrist around the other wrist. And it's like mapping out the shape, having sort of all the sensory input from touch. Good. Do it a few more times. See if you can breathe as you do it. Keep the movement really smooth. Follow the wrist. Follow the wrist. So there's stuff happening up in your shoulder and your elbow. One arm is relatively still. My hand is moving out of the way, or kind of being guided around by the other arm. You can see, I mean, this is kind of like a Tai Chi pushing hands movement. It develops a degree of smoothness to it. And then when you're ready, change. So your right arm is still in the air and your left wrist is tracing the shape of your right wrist. Again, leave your fingers really nice and soft. It's kind of like a sensory experience as well. It's like you're really kind of getting into the feeling, or the feeling of the hands being connected to each other. My right arm is still. My left arm is moving around my right arm. Good. Bring your arms down and take a little rest. And maybe you can feel the effect of the lesson kind of spreading into the rest of the arms now. So it's like as the wrist becomes more relaxed and the fingers are relaxed, the arms are kind of in turn, the information is sort of spreading in some way. Once you've taken a little rest, bring both wrists back up. Bring both wrists back up. And I want you to rotate now both wrists around each other. So as I'm doing it, if you see, I can do it from the side, that to come in with both wrists and to come very gently out. To come in and out and in. And this is a way that both wrists can be rotating around each other at the same time. If you want, you can tie this in with your breathing. This can become a little like a Qigong lesson. Good. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Keep your eyes closed. Keep your breathing smooth. And feel this sort of sense, this growing sense of connection between the two wrists. Good. Okay, when you're ready, I'd like you to change direction. If you need, maybe actually let's everyone take a little rest and we'll change direction afterwards. When you're ready, bring your wrists back up and now go in the other direction. So now you're kind of going whichever way you weren't doing. So for me, I was pulling in and then coming up. Now I'm going up and down, up and over and down. And just kind of feel that the wrists can stay connected throughout the whole movement. Almost like they're communicating or they're stuck together. The image I used for the lesson was a guy who had an infinity symbol on his wrist. So maybe you can kind of feel this sort of infinity symbol happening between your two wrists. Good, and then change direction again. And see if you can kind of get it really nice and smooth, this communication between your two wrists. If you want, you can change direction again. And then when you're ready, bring your arms down, separate your two wrists, and rest your arms on your thighs. Just however you've chosen to rest your hand, your arm, your wrist on your leg. Just see if you can make a very small circular movement in the wrist itself. So whether your palm is facing down, placed on the thigh, or it's open and faced up, just see if you can kind of use the joint of the wrist to make this very small circle. Not a big movement, but very small, very relaxed. You could try a few times on your left wrist and a few times on your right wrist. And you could try in both directions as well. Could you do both together? Both in different directions? And hopefully you feel after that there's something that's kind of let go in the wrists. They feel easier, more comfortable. Your hands feel more comfortable. Maybe even your sense of touch, if you were to touch something, would be more vivid. There's something about exploring our sense of touch and how it informs our nervous system that I think is a really productive way of kind of learning kind of about ourselves, how we move. Okay, so that was this morning's lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope your wrists feel really nice and good. If you have any feedback, I'd love to hear it in the comments section. You're very welcome to tell me if there was things that you liked and if you didn't like. I'm really open to feedback, so please let me know. And yeah, so I also want to say quickly thank you to everyone that's already donated. I've had a few donations recently, which is really appreciated. I know that this is a tough time for a lot of people, but in some way I'm hoping that I'm doing my part. And so, you know, when people do donate, I really do appreciate it. So thank you, everyone. There is links in my description to the Thoughtful Movements community group. If you're not part of that, please join into that group. You can rewatch the old lessons, and you can also chat with other people. There isn't much of that going on in there at the moment, but maybe we can develop that a little bit, make it more of a community. So if you want to join into that, that would be great. You can also access my lessons on YouTube, or you may be watching these on YouTube. If you don't really like Facebook as a platform, then yeah, YouTube's an option. There's also a link to my description. And yes, I have classes on a Monday evening. Yesterday's class has just gone. I also have a Tai Chi and Qigong class on a Sunday morning from 9:30 till 10:45. If anyone's interested, please just drop me a message. Okay. Thank you all for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. And we'll be back tomorrow with another hand finger lesson. And I will see you then. Take care. Bye.